Hello, Marblehead, and greetings from Abbott Hall. This is a special edition of Up for Discussion, a program where we explore the issues that you are talking about around town. Our thanks to Town Administrator John McGinn for inviting us into the 1776 room here at Abbott Hall while our MHTV facilities undergo a major upgrade. Our panel for September is Joanne Mayer, a former member of the Board of Selectmen and a local political activist. Also, Ethan Foreman, the reporter for the Salem Evening News. And Chris Stevens, editor of the Marblehead Reporter and wickedlocal.com. So, Joanne, this must feel interesting to you to be back in the Selectman's chair?
It's always a great room. It's such full of history, and it's just really great to be here.
Well, on our front burner, the changing face of Marblehead. 3 projects are promising to alter the landscape of our town. One, a helpful place for seniors to live. Another, to provide much-needed parking in the downtown business district. And the third, to upgrade our waterfront near State Street Wharf. So let's begin and take them one by one. Chris, bring us up to speed on the Mariner, if you would.
Well, they've filed their plans. 87-unit, 108-bed assisted living facility is what they're touting at the moment. There's going to be a public hearing on the 21st, so people can come out and kind of hear about the program or hear about the project and voice any concerns that they might have. You know, and that's really where they are. There's not a lot you can do. They've got to have the public hearing.
So the hearing would be before the Board of Appeals?
Yes.
And this is for...
I'm assuming they need a special permit. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked over the whole application, so I don't know exactly what it is that they're looking for, but it's the opportunity for the public to come out, which is nice. I think it's a good project. I don't, you know, I think the buzz around town, generally it's needed. There's not any place like that in Marblehead that I know of. You know, people, I know several people actually in just this year that have left town because they need to downsize and there's no place really for them to go. So I think that I think it's a good project.
I've heard nothing but positive things about it. It's probably going to be expensive, but they all are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be on the idea of like a Brixby Village kind of place. It's got a library. They're going to have a workout room. They're, you know, going to have all the amenities. So it's sort of like one of these all-inclusive, so you don't have to leave the property. You can kind of stay there and do everything.
So this would kind of stem the flow of people headed from Vinnon Square out of Marblehead as they get a little bit older?
Maybe it's the answer to the Vinnon Square.
Well, it seems like there's a spate of these projects on the North Shore. I think we're looking into one in Swampscott on Salem Street, and that's would be in the vicinity of the Marshalls building.
Really?
So it seems like there's a spate of these. I wonder with this project, though, being built on Pleasant Street, whether this would be create a traffic problem, and also whether, you know, you would, if you need a light there, you know, then you're stuck at the light there, then you're stuck at the light at the fire station, you know, it's like, you know, and you're stuck at the light at the at Smith Street, so it's a very tricky road, and turning left out of that might trigger some discussion. So
Those things can be fixed. And they can also you can enter from the rear. You don't have to enter from Pleasant Street.
Which I think it is.
Which I think is the plan.
Yeah,
I think that's the plan.
Is an entrance, is to have the egress.
So that's good,
from Pleasant Street, yeah, because that would be tough. Although there'll be traffic with people coming to visit, obviously people that work there, but it's going to be assisted living. So I'm not thinking that a whole lot of the people are going to be driving. So, you know, some may not, but I think in terms of residents, there's probably not going to be a lot of traffic.
Probably less than if they built houses there.
Totally. I think absolutely there'd be less if they were building houses, because nowadays it seems like everybody has, it used to be interesting that people had 2 cars. Now I see people have 3 cars in their yard. So I think there would absolutely be more traffic if it were houses.
And what do we know about the developers?
Two of them are local. Michael Lafayette and Heather Carnes, I believe they're married. They live out on the neck. You know, the family does I don't know if they still do it because I'm relatively new, but it used to do the big haunted house out on the neck. That's them.
Oh,
So,
crying out loud.
Yeah, is that right?
yeah. And the other gentleman is Philip Helms from, what is it, Helms Company. It's a consulting.
He's a Marbleheader too, I believe.
He's also on the
He's on our
planning board.
planning board, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. He is on the planning board. I forgot. Yeah.
Heather Carnes is a former, she went to school in Marblehead, graduated from Marblehead Schools, went to California and worked for Google and came back,
cool.
and she's just a great asset to the town.
That's great.
I think she was the number 4 employee at Google.
Wow.
Started out
That's
as a
fantastic.
secretary, yeah.
Oh.
It's a very interesting story.
Worked
I mean, it
in,
looks
worked in
like a
human
good-
resources.
I mean, they look like
So it's local money,
pensions.
and the management, they've picked a management according to your newspaper.
Yeah, and it seems like having that local, those local developers will be able to address any of those concerns.
It's nice that they live here too, so it's going to be concerns for them as well. You know?
Well, what are you hearing from the neighbors? Anything yet, or is it too early?
I've talked to a couple of neighbors, and they seem to be positive about it.
Yeah, we
I
did too.
think,
Same thing.
considering the development that could take place on that property,
Mm-hmm.
this is a great alternative. It's going to look nice. It's compact in terms of what a housing development would look like. So I think it's a favorable addition.
It's probably not going to be a lot of wild parties or anything. So. Although there could be, you never know.
Yeah, that silver tsunami, you
Just
never
wait,
know.
wait till I get there.
I think Fraffy's going to have something to say about that at the end of the show, as a matter of fact, so we'll have to see how that goes. On the front burner, the Mariner heads into some strong winds. The assisted living project on Pleasant Street was before the Board of Appeals recently, but because of a surprisingly large and loud crowd, the meeting was recessed until the end of this month and moved to the high school. Will, you covered the meeting, so tell us what went on.
Yeah, so it's actually according to our town planner, Becky Cutting, she said that it was the largest crowd that a planning board or a ZBA meeting has ever had before. So that kind of just tells you right off the bat how much interest there is in this project. One of the words that I said was some of the words that I thought of, or some adjectives that I thought of whenever I was thinking about before coming here, was people were tense. They were kind of pouncy. They sort of wanted to learn. They were eager to learn more information. But as we all know now, they had to shut down the meeting before they could even get a word in or start any.
So town officials were surprised by the turnout?
They were.
And there was no AV, right? Weren't they saying they couldn't hear anybody?
That's right. They did not have any.
And then the issue came, they were like 2 or 3 deep around the walls, weren't they?
They were, yes. People were outlining the wall of the space.
So all of the chairs were filled, people were all around, and somebody wanted to know if it was a fire hazard.
That's right. They did. They did want to know. They did.
Where was it? The community center?
It
right?
was the community center on Humphrey Street, and it was in the Marblehead Council on Aging's dining room. So they had originally moved it to from Abbott Hall to the dining room to actually accommodate a large crowd that they thought was going to come, and they got a larger crowd than they thought initially. So yeah.
So it's been moved. So what was the mood? I mean, you described several things, but
people have in recent, I would say probably about a week before the meeting, you started to hear some not negative things, but some concerns that people were having, about increased traffic that the development project might have, some noise pollution that could come about once the project's finished. And also some people were actually handing out packets that said that they were worried about a devaluation of their properties if the project comes into fruition. Yes.
so there are 3 different leaflets out there. None of them signed, I guess. Is that
No,
right?
not as far as we
they're
know.
calling
No, nobody's put their name
themselves
down.
Marblehead concerned Marblehead residents, and so those packets were being handed out during the meeting.
But do we know who they are?
No, we don't.
Of course not.
Okay. So
No one has stepped forward to claim.
to claim ownership of the opposition?
Yeah, exactly.
There
yeah.
were people there, though, that had sign-up sheets as well. They had some sign-up sheets, so there was some organizing going on.
One of the things that I was wondering about is that I was there, I was in the audience, and you didn't hear much from people who are proponents of it. And do you think it's just because they were getting the read and thinking this isn't gonna be finished and
Maybe.
yeah.
I was surprised. I was completely blown away when he told me what the tenor of the room was. I did not expect that sort of outcome. I did not expect to hear so many people against the project. It just seems like a great project.
And I think generally in rooms like that, in situations like that, the opponents outnumber the supporters.
Yeah.
Definitely louder. I think they're definitely louder. Yeah.
In kind of enthusiasm or anger, as the case may be.
So,
No, I just think that there's a lot of misinformation in terms of what the residents' part to this whole process is. The residents have a piece and that they can come in and tell what their concerns are. And the zoning board listens closely, and if there are legitimate concerns, then they may put them into the eventual conditions, they call them, and it's part of the zoning board permit. And those conditions can be things like screening for trees to a project, or if the road isn't wide enough, maybe they think, and they might think, well, maybe that's got some merit, and they could make the road wider. But the reality is that our zoning bylaw provides for this kind of a facility.
Exactly.
And the only things that they haven't done, it's already been, it's fulfilled the requirements that a project like this would need. They haven't finished the traffic survey, which they don't anticipate is going to be a big issue.
No, I don't
So
think
the residents have no vote. They're not going to be able to say, we don't want this, and it can't happen, because it's already been decided by the town meeting that this sort of a facility is something the town wants and needs.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the larger picture here is being missed, is that there's a great need for assisted living facilities. Something like the population of people from 65 to 74 is going to double from 2010 to 2030.
yeah.
They're going to have to live somewhere, and as we know in Marblehead, a lot of these houses are not fit to be adapted for people who are in their 70s and 80s.
I think it's really a shame that today, if somebody needs assisted living, they really have to move out of town, don't
That's
they?
right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no,
unfortunate.
yeah, there's not really
We've
any
been
place.
saying ever since we lost the proposal on Salem Harbor, on Marblehead side, isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
We really need something like this, and this is a perfect location, and I'm dumbfounded, frankly, because of my age too. I can understand what the need for it, but I still think it's part of a community to have this type of thing.
Do you think there would be more acceptance if they scale it down? Like, I'm thinking maybe if they put conditions on it, it's 83 units?
84.
84 units? I mean,
yeah.
that's big. I'm just wondering if maybe if they scale it down, if people would be more, and I don't know that that's even on the table, I'm just,
The zoning bylaw says that if you have sufficient land relative to this
And they do.
number of
Yeah.
people that you're planning, 184 was it?
I think
It has
it's
to be a certain-
103 people, 84 units or
Units,
something
that's
like
right.
that.
Well,
yeah.
whatever that
More than one
combination is,
person.
they
Yeah.
do have sufficient land according to the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
So they don't need to scale it down. And after all, this is a business proposition. This is something the town needs.
And that's what I think people forget. This is a private industry. The town is not in on this. I mean, the town is not supporting it. It's not a town-run project. It's a private company.
So it'll pay taxes.
Yes, it will. Sure.
Well, there's another.
And the other thing I don't think people are thinking about, and talk about traffic, is sufficient number of houses could be built on that property. And the people
Yeah.
that have bought this and are preparing this proposal own that land. So by right, they can put a number of houses in there, and what is that going to do for traffic? I mean, a residence takes, there's a lot of traffic coming and going between the,
2 cars per house.
and
At
it's not
minimum.
just that, it's
Yeah.
the yard men, it's the snow, it's just a whole bunch of, plus kids going to school, which is a factor.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, they're going to build something on that property.
Yeah.
So it would be nice to see something that would benefit the community.
fits
that would fit.
the need.
Yeah.
Something other than a housing development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
in my opinion, but.
Of course, we're all talking to the choir here tonight.
Yeah, that is true.
Somebody said to me, I was sitting there and I was sitting between two ladies who were not thrilled with the project, and one of them says to me, "Are you in a butter?" And I said, "No, but I plan to be. I plan to live there."
I'm booking my room right now.
So, well, it'll be interesting. The hearing is the end of this month. I think it's the 26th
26th.
at the high school.
Yes.
And there was some question as to whether they were going to have it at the auditorium or in the gym, but it's somewhere at the high school.
Yeah, it's
right?
at the high school.
So that'll take care of that. Well, we'll see what happens as it goes. They need a special, why do they need a special permit for this?
It is in a single residence district, so therefore it does have to have a hearing, which is what they did have and are having. And there are other strictures when you do change the zoning bylaws for a special, this is a special thing, and therefore they don't need a variance, which is quite a different thing and much
Okay, that's what
much more difficult to get. Special permit just means they go through this process of hearings and feel out the residents and that kind of thing.
And kind of try to meet their
Exactly.
objections and so on. Well, it'll be an interesting situation as it goes along, and certainly that hearing on the 26th will be interesting. There's been 3 different flyers I've seen around town. Somebody's been leafleting the farmer's market.
Yes.
I talked to that woman at the farmer's market.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Hello, Marblehead, and welcome to Up for Discussion, a program where we explore the issues that you are talking about around town. Our panel for November is Ethan Foreman, editor of the Salem News, Chris Stevens, editor of the Marblehead Reporter and wickedlocal.com, Will Dowd, assistant editor of the Marblehead Reporter, and Joanne Mayer, a former member of the Board of Selectmen. On the front burner, the Mariner, Chapter 2. The Board of Appeals resumed its hearing into the Mariner project on Pleasant Street. Proponents are seeking a special permit under the zoning law to build 84 units to house independent living, assisted living, and memory care patients. Neighbors want to keep the area as single residences only, and a parade of architects and engineers appeared before the board to talk about traffic, drainage, landscaping, and more. But when the ZBA put off comments from the public until later in November, some in the audience were not happy. So, Joanne, there seems to be a lot of confusion about this process. Do people think that they're going to get to vote on this?
No, we don't. It's a law that's already on the books in Marblehead that we have, that we do want, we need this type of facility. So the hearings come to do with the actual conditions on which it'll happen. There are certain things that are laid out, as we said last month, in the bylaw that they have to fulfill, and the builders have pretty much fulfilled the requirements. The zoning board is sitting to examine how they have fulfilled these requirements, to be sure that they are totally complied with, and they'll also be listening to the neighbors, the public, and the community at large in case they have some ideas that they might put into the project to make it better or more suitable to them. But basically, the project is allowed by bylaw. It's a matter of making it suitable and acceptable to the public as much as possible.
I think there's been a little bit of confusion, though, because I see lawn signs.
There has been.
Now I've seen a button that supports it, and it's almost like a political campaign.
Yeah.
And I'm
It's too
thinking
bad.
you got, what, 5 people who are going to vote on this?
Yeah, yeah. And it's getting nasty too, which is kind of sad to see. I feel like people are getting a little mean-spirited about it.
I think, again, as I said in the last week, I don't think people understand the process.
No. No.
Now, they certainly, if they have legitimate complaints about this proposal, they can voice them, and the builders will very likely comply pretty much with what they want. They'll do their best, because they want to live in the community too, basically.
You know, I went to that zoning board hearing. And
I did
I
too.
saw you there, and I saw you there. And it seemed that the experts all had their reports before the board. They were lengthy, and it was freezing in there, and the night went on and on and on.
What they did.
But the board did take a couple of votes, and one was to take all of these expert reports and do what they call a peer review. So
I think only 2 of them for peer review.
I think.
Well, maybe you could be right.
Well,
Maybe more than
it was drainage, it
Yep.
was lighting, it was traffic.
Yeah.
I don't think they did it on landscaping, but I'm
No.
not sure.
Well, that's open
Probably
for
not.
grabs still.
The lighting one was sort of an impromptu vote.
Yeah.
After they just decided to do that third one, run the spot pretty much to do an independent study for that one.
It's probably to
as
appease the
well.
neighbors. Lighting can be very touchy. People are afraid
Yeah.
it's going
Yeah,
to
and
shine in
that's
their
something,
windows. and-
that's something they can have real input on.
Yes, absolutely.
And they should.
Yeah, the way they angle a light,
Yeah.
the shield they use, there's a dozen different ways you
But
can
that
you
is,
can
that
fix
is
lighting.
something that the builders seem to have really been serious about, because the lighting that they're put in is the most, as I understand it, is about the best you can do
Yeah.
Wow.
in terms of being able
Yeah.
to sheet it from the neighbors.
Yeah, they're using this sort of LED technology where they can sort of direct the light rather than like fluorescent lights or incandescent or whatever. But it's basically this technology is developed so that you can actually have more control over the lighting. So yeah,
And
that's,
it can be control, meaning it can be dimmed as the night goes on.
and we also heard from the landscaper who said that they're going to be putting in various barriers or trees, but it's going to take some time for those trees to grow, obviously. But
5
that should
years.
sort of 5 years, yeah, 5
Well,
years.
that's another
in
place
5
where
years' time.
the abutters can have some input. They can insist on bigger trees.
Yeah, they can certainly plant larger trees.
I talked to some of the neighbors down there, and one in particular who seemed to say that the neighborhood was happy about the peer reviews, and that because they don't trust the traffic study, they just don't trust it. The drainage one, they think that 24-inch pipe in Pleasant Street is not adequate to drain it out. So the peer review will look at all of that and determine if the original stuff is right, I suppose. But I think what made the residents most unhappy at that hearing was that there was some misunderstanding about when the public gets to speak on
Well,
this.
That's true, and I think that was unfortunate. It should have been said that once we have this settled, and once we have listened to all the whole project in whole, and we make our decision, then it will be open for you to change, because there's no way you can change it now.
No, you haven't heard.
We have to have the whole project in front of us.
But then also, I think there's a point that was made that this meeting was exceptional. I mean, there were over 240 people that were there. If you have that many people there, maybe there could have been some sort of, overruling or sort of, sidestepping of what regularly goes on. That's what people have said.
But you also have to remember, this is a working meeting of the ZBA.
Yes.
These guys have a job to do.
Yeah.
And if you do the meetings always sort of run the same, and they explained it at the first meeting, I think, but of course that was such a zoo, nobody was probably really paying attention. When you go to a ZBA meeting, they ask for people to stand who are in favor of the project and people who are opposed to project, and that always comes at the end, because like Joanne said, you have to hear about the project before you can actually,
React to it.
really react to it. So,
But I'm surprised that I've been at contentious planning board hearings, zoning board hearings, and I'm surprised that they didn't say to the developers, okay, finish your presentations within a certain amount of time so we can hear from the residents, knowing that there's so many people who are out and may have some questions about it.
Yeah.
By hearing from the residents, it can sort of mollify some of their objections, because the residents will bring up a topic and the consultants are there and they may be able to answer it, and then it doesn't, these opposition topics don't simmer.
yeah, that's true. They could.
But it's
Well-
hard,
Could've.
because turning it over at that point means that there's got to be agreement among the builders and you really need to have the project in a basket to present.
Yeah, it gets
in
off
my
track.
view. Because otherwise you'd be there and we were there late and it was
Days.
freezing. I thought I was going to die.
Why was it so cold?
I don't know what was going on there. But boy, I'll tell you, if they'd spent much longer, I was actually trying to figure out, how can I get out of here?
Well, the question is, how much does how much work does the town? Is there an engineer who reviews these very technical specifications of the project. Maybe that has to be done behind the scenes, and so that at least the zoning board is a little bit up to speed on what's going on, and not rely on a public meeting with 200 people who really want to voice their concerns.
This is a hearing, it wasn't a public meeting. I mean, it was the public,
Right.
it's an open meeting, we have an
Yes.
open meeting law.
that's
I
it.
agree
But
with
it's-
you.
that's what this
If they
is, the
had
working
thought it out
meeting.
and had another chance, they might have taken your suggestion, but they've been doing this for years, and that's the way they always do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of curious as to, I think the chairman was pretty clear at the beginning.
Yes,
Yeah,
it was.
I think he was too.
We are not going to hear from the public if we don't have time. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but basically that's what he said. And I would sense that in that room, I think we got out of there or somewhere around 10 p.m. maybe.
I think so.
If you had a parade of people getting up to voice their concern, and then after a while it all becomes repetitious because, and so I don't know what the best way to do it. I think they kind of led with their chin in proposing Thanksgiving week as the time for the next meeting.
Well, that had to do with this peer review things. There's a lot of work that has to be done. They couldn't just have it in a week or two because
Right.
they've got to have the traffic study and the drainage, and who knows how long that's going to, you know how hard it is to get people to do stuff. So I think they were just making it so that it would be ready for the next meetings, so we wouldn't have a meeting say, well, so sorry, we don't have all the information we need.
Yeah, I'm not even sure.
That would make 'em really mad.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they will have all of it done yet.
I
I don't
agree.
know what. Yeah, that's 4 weeks is not. I don't think that's. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, December maybe.
It's a little window.
And then you get into Christmas.
Yeah, then
I
you get
mean,
into Christmas and Hanukkah and all the
Well,
holidays.
and sometimes when you read a group, nothing's going to make some of them happy.
yeah.
In talking to the people that I talk to, they're saying, look, we understand the needs of the elderly. And then one of them said to me, well, you're in the Council on Aging, you explain to me what's going on. And I talked about the silver tsunami and the baby boomers and the need from that point of view. So I think there are some neighbors who think that the ZBA is at least being reasonable. But all it takes is a
many.
couple of people to do the catcalling from the gallery, and the tone of the meeting changes, and everybody gets
did.
painted with the same brush.
And it definitely shifted toward the end there.
Oh, interestingly, I checked with Swampscott. They are going to have an assisted living, and it's going to be 86 people. It went through in a breeze, and I said, I already introduced myself as from Marblehead, and I said, well, did you have any people come to your meetings? And he said, not too many. He said, we had a couple from 100 Salem Street, which is the street right down the way. So I said, well, you were pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I think the one in Marblehead is behind Marshall's, right? And it probably is
In Swampscott, you mean?
pretty much a commercial area? Or,
And I think that's really sort of playing into it because the development in Swampscott is right on Pleasant Street, you're right there. People go by that every day. This is land that's just tucked behind Marshall's. No one knows it's there. I mean, you're going to put housing back there, that's fine. You can't see that parcel from the
There's single-family
road.
housing there now, though.
I
single
couldn't figure
family-
out where the parcel was.
It's
Yeah, me
it's
either.
behind. There's just a sort of no man's land. If you go into Swampscott, there's like a bungalow as you
Yep.
go into the
Just-
toward the Marshalls,
just
and
as you
that's that
said.
land that's kind of over the hill, so it's kind of up over. You don't really know it's there. Kids might cut through there to get to this, going to and from school or from high school. And I think that's really sort of playing into why Swampscott didn't really have any opposition. I think it's really site-specific.
The traffic at Vinton Square is an absolute disaster.
It's not going to get any better or worse. And if you put an assisted living facility sort of in a commercial area, people are just going to walk. You just walk to Marshall's. You don't have to drive out.
Well, I mean, there are people that say it's not that we're against assisted living or the elderly, but the location.
Yeah.
But we're in Marblehead. I mean, everything is so tight in Marblehead.
Yeah.
Where do you put it?
I think that's the other problem for the Mariner. I think people just see the town, land is just disappearing. There's nothing left. There's very little open space, and I think that's the thing that the developers are probably struggling with, because people just don't like to see another piece of land now get developed, and especially with such a high density.
I
I
got
think-
news.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, I got news for them. It's gonna get developed.
Yeah, well, that's
It's
it.
going to be
And there's
developed.
going to be more open space, I think, with this plan than there would be if they
I
put
agree.
14 single-family homes up
Or
there.
if they really push it and it goes into the court, Marblehead loses control.
Yeah,
And it could go into any kind of housing you can think of, like 40B, low-income housing, and that would be really dense. So
yeah.
it's kind of a tricky thing here.
Be careful what you wish for.
Be
I guess.
careful what you wish
exactly.
for.
Yeah,
Because you can't fight a 40B if there's land for it.
no.
No. Well, then I guess it's in peer review now. There'll be another shot at this at the end of November, November 23rd, I believe.
It's a Monday.
And then we'll see what happens there.